Chapter 468. Elvis's voice was shaking along with his heartbeat. On the other hand, Gu Mingming's tantrum gradually calmed down after he repeated, "I love you." Realizing that Gu Mingming was no longer struggling and no longer trying to push him away, Elvis carefully loosened the distance between them. Looking at Gu Mingming, who was dripping with tears, Elvis became even more flustered. Kissing her tears, Elvis's heart
Chapter
ached
476.
terribly. "Don't cry, don't
Gu
cry."
Mingming rolled her
I don't
eyes
know
at
what to
Elvis,
do when
but
you
did
cry.
not pursue the matter
I promise
further.
I won't lie to
She
you
looked at
anymore.
her four
Don't cry.
sons who had been thrown
Gu
onto the
Mingming
ground
lifted
and
her
frowned,
tear-stained face to
pointing
look at
at
Elvis,
Jiao Yu.
saying,
She asked,
"Of course
"Why
it's
is
wrong
there
for
no
you
mud
to
on
lie,
third brother
but
at
it's
all?"
even more wrong for
Elvis
you
turned
to
his head
secretly
and met
open
his
the back
third
door for
brother's
someone
eyes.
else right from the
His
start
gaze
of mating.
unknowingly became
How much
gentle.
do you really care about
Stretching
me that
out
you would
his
create
hand,
such an
Jiao
opportunity
Yu
for other
immediately
males?"
jumped onto Elvis's
Elvis
lap.
shook his head, saying,
He placed his
"No,
front
no,
paws on
Xiaoming."
Elvis's chest
Gu
and
Mingming
licked
did
his
not
face
give Elvis
intimately.
any chance to
He even
explain,
used his
only
little head to
continuing,
nudge his chin.
"Yes."
Leah
Elvis
is your
replied
good
with a
brother.
purr that
You guys
only
have
wolves
many
could
years of
understand.
relationship foundation.
Jiao Yu leaped
You
back
can't
to
just
Gu
watch him
Mingming's
freeze
back
to
and
death
placed his
outside.
chin on Gu Mingming's
Then can't you
waist.
just tell me directly?
He laid down
I'm
immediately
such an
and allowed
unreasonable
his
person.
mother to
Must I
stroke
watch
his
him
fur.
court death and not
Elvis
stop
looked
him?
at the mother and
Don't
son
tell me that
gently
if
and
you just
replied,
tell me directly,
"Jiao
will
Yu's
I
eyes
stop
are
you from
so
letting him
similar
in?"
to yours."
Elvis
Clean
was at
and
a loss,
transparent.
asking,
Since
looking
the
at his
outcome
eyes,
is the
I could
same,
not bear to
don't
throw
be
him
angry.
away.
Gu
Gu
Mingming
Mingming shook her
"How
head
can
in
calling your brother
exasperation.
into the cave to
She
hide
turned to
from
look
the
again,
wind
and me calling
although
my
Huda and
ex-boyfriend
Qishan
home while
also
my
had
husband
mud
is
on them,
unconscious
most
be
of
the
it was
same?"
concentrated on their
Elvis
limbs.
shook his head at
It
Gu
seemed like
Mingming's
they had
howl,
run back
saying,
up on their
"It's
own
not
after
the
being
same, it's
thrown
not
down.
the same."
But
Gu
Kanwu,
Mingming sniffled,
Elvis saw
wiping
Gu
her
Mingming
tears,
looking at
saying,
Kanwu, and
"Anyway,
before
you
she
don't
could
love
ask,
me
he
that
answered
much. I'll
first.
leave with my son
He
once
jumped
we
into
return to
play and
Saint
refused to
Nazaire.
come up no matter
Since you
what.
like Leah so
I
much,
couldn't
you
even
can
stop
continue
him.
living with him.
You can ask Bode if
Hearing
you
that
don't
Gu
believe
Mingming
me.
was leaving,
Gu
Elvis
Mingming
hurriedly
laughed
hugged
coldly
her
and
in
said,
his arms,
"You are
saying,
obviously
"I don't like
bullying my
Leah.
sons for
I
not
hate
knowing
him,
how to
really.
speak."
I
Bode,
hate him the
would he
most.
dare
I
to
don't want to
expose
live
you?
with him."
Elvis's
Gu
smile
Mingming did
froze
not
and
say
he did
a
not
word,
dare to
only
reply.
turning her head to
Gu
one
Mingming
side.
sighed and did
Elvis
not
also
pursue the
turned
matter.
his head, looking
After
at Gu
all,
Mingming's
if she
little
lectured
face,
Elvis
saying,
in front of
"I
his
wish it were
sons,
just the two of us
Elvis's
living in the
authority
cave
as a
for the
father
rest
would
of
be
our
greatly
lives with no
reduced."
outsiders." Heaving a
But
sigh
I'm
of
just
relief,
worried that you'll get
Gu
tired of
Mingming
looking
stood
at
up
me
from
every
the bed
day.
and called out.
Gu Mingming
Steamed
glared at
Bundishwan
him.
Kanwu
"You're
stand at
making a
attention."
false
The
accusation?
four little fellows did
Elvis
not
shook
know
his
what
head.
standing at attention
"I don't
meant.
dare, I don't
They
dare."
only knew that
How
their
would I
mother
dare
was
to
calling
hit
them,
you?
so they
I'm just
all
worried.
rushed to Gu Mingming's
Elvis was
feet and
halfway
huddled
through his
together.
sentence when he
Kanwu
stopped
even
under
took
Gu
the
Mingming's
opportunity
glare.
to rub the mud on
He
his body
corrected
onto
himself and
Elvis,
said,
seeing how he
not
was
like
in a bad
Leah?
mood but did
Gu
not
Mingming
dare to
lowered
punish
her
him in
head
front
and
of his
remained
mother.
silent for a
Kanwu's
moment.
eyes,
Then
which
she
were
replied
identical to
gloomily,
Elvis's,
"Maybe.
were filled with
I
pride.
still like him from the bottom
Elvis
of my
clenched
heart.
his teeth. That was
This
why I
Kanwu
allowed
was
him to
indeed
pester
very
me with
annoying.
all sorts of
Gu
excuses.
Mingming did not
If I
notice
wanted
the
to
fight
avoid
between
him,
the
I
father
could
and
definitely
son.
avoid him.
She only asked her four
But I
sons to
indulged
line
him.
up and follow
He was
behind
right.
her
In
out
fact,
of the
I
cave.
quite enjoyed being
Elvis had
surrounded by
finally
him
been
and
partially
she turned to look
away.
naturally more
I
short
rejected
and
him
short
and
and
refused
refused
to
to
give him a
indicating that
response.
he was
So he was
innocent.
not
But
in the
at the same
mood to
time,
argue
the moment
with
she
Kanwu.
exited the cave,
He only
Gu
is
Mingming
very
saw Leah
selfish.
standing
Used
at a
his
distance
tail
to
to
sweep
sweep
him when he
It had
passed
only
by
been
him.
wanted to say something
Directly
last
did not
saw
say
him
anything
from the
back.
back
He
of
had
the group
lost a
to the
lot of
wall.
weight.
He just
Hugged
hugged
her
her
in
in
his
his
arms
arms
with a
and
dull
patted her
thud.
back
That
like
fellow did not even
because of
realize
the
the
strange
atmosphere
atmosphere
between the
between
messenger of the
when
beast
Gu
deity
Mingming
and
heard
the
the
tribe
tribe
leader,
leader
in
and
which
they
they
gushed out and
everyone was
back to the
extremely
team. Gu
cautious.
Mingming bit her lower
afraid
lip
that
and
they
made
might
up her
get
mind
into
to
trouble.
turn her head to the
For
side.
the next 2 days,
She walked
everyone
past
set
Leah but
off when
chose
Gu
to ignore
Mingming
him.
said to go.
If you love,
When
please
Gu
love
Mingming
deeply.
said to stop.
If you
Everyone
abandon,
stood
please
at
be
attention.
thorough. Don't
Even
be
the
ambiguous.
pampered females
Hurting
did
others
not
dare
dare
to
to
complain.
Gu Mingming
Finally, on the
repeated the
afternoon
sentence
of the
in her
second
heart,
day,
telling
Gu
herself
Mingming
that
and
as
the
long
rest
as she was
returned to
more
Saint
ruthless,
Nazaire.
Leah
Aside
might
from
just
the
give up and
topic,
leave after
an
accumulating
unforgettable
enough
night, an
disappointment with her.
unforgettable night.
That way,
Audience
audience friends, it's time to say goodbye to everyone again. Chapter 477.
Chapter 469.
Leah grabbed Gu
On the day
Mingming's
they
arm,
returned
but
to
did
the
not
tribe,
pull her into
Leah
his
was chased
arms.
out of Elvis's
He just
cave
maintained
by
a
Gu
back-to-back
Mingming.
position.
rejection. He stood at the outskirts of Elvis's territory afraid that he would personally witness her rejection. In the past, he had also stood here before, afraid that she would not be able to withstand his pleading. That time, the weather was still very cold, and he was also in despair. Lee's voice was a little dry, with a hint of indifference in his hoarse voice. Elvis was also ordered to move to the outermost room of the platform of the deity's punishment. And her 4 sons stayed in the innermost room. What are you going to the platform of the deity's punishment to Barit and Colin to make arrangements? But the words were stuck in her throat. The 16 valued females would choose their homes and territories in turn, all his strength to slowly loosen his grip. But Gu Mengmeng naturally did not need to worry about these trivial matters. Humans were indeed selfish and greedy. So she just stayed in the cave to accompany her sons and did not go anywhere and fawning by her side. But even if she did not go out, it did not mean that the people outside herself that since she could not afford it, after Colin saw then she would set him free. He went home and told Sandy that pulled her hand out and left resolute mood. Only
He
after
did
she
not know
had
if she
walked
had
a distance
quarreled with
away
Leah
did
or
Leah
with
dare to
Elvis.
turn around.
But the two males
Leaning
looked
against
as if
the
they were on
tree
the
trunk,
verge of
he
death.
slowly sat
One
on the ground
sprawled
and
at the
clutched his
entrance and the
chest
other
tightly.
outside the cave.
His gaze was
Sandy
fixated
was
in the
worried about
direction
Gu
where Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng
had
had
disappeared
disappeared to.
She first
His
saw
left
Leah,
hand,
which was
indeed
holding onto her
dispirited,
wrist,
sitting on a tree
maintained
branch
the
and
posture
staring
when
at
she
the
pulled
entrance
away.
of the cave.
He said,
Sandy looked
"In
up
this
and
lifetime,
asked,
I
"How
only
did you
made that
offend
one
our Gu
mistake,
Mengmeng?"
but I
Leah
never
was
had the
extra
chance to be
polite to
forgiven."
Sandy because Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng
treated
brought
her
her
very
sons to the
differently.
stream and wanted to
Seeing
jump in to
Sandy's
help them
question,
bathe.
Leah
But was
jumped down
stopped
from the
by
tree and
Elvis.
said,
Elvis
"Elvis
called out and
boundaries," she
Jiao
said,
Yu and
and
Hooded
Hooded
jumped
more
into the
greedily.
stream with a plop.
So she ran away.
Qixian hesitated for
Sandy
a moment,
frowned and looked
but
at
after
Leah,
being
throwing
glared
a
at by
sentence at
Elvis,
him,
he could
"Don't
only
you know
jump
how to
in.
speak properly?"
Only Kanwu,
Before
who was
leaving.
covered in mud,
Leah
stood
sighed
by
and
the
leaned
shore,
back on the tree
refusing to go
branch,
down,
wondering if
Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
covered
would
in
come
mud
out
and
later
felt
to fetch or
uncomfortable.
send Sandy off.
But he just did not
That
want to
way
listen
he
to
would be
Elvis.
able to see her.
The more he asked them to go
Sandy
down,
walked
the more
past
he
Elvis
refused to
and
go
glanced
down.
at the listless Elvis,
Since Mother was
asking,
here,
"What
about
could he
you?
do?
How did you offend our Gu
Kanwu felt a
Mengmeng
pain
again?"
in his buttocks,
Elvis
and when he
did not
regained
even
his
lift his
senses,
head
he
and
had already
sighed.
fallen
"My
into
lie
the
was
stream in a free
discovered."
fall.
He tried
Sandy
to struggle
frowned
with
and said,
Elvis, but was
"You
stopped
deserve
by
it."
Huda.
Before
Huda
leaving
used the little
deep
wolf's
into the
language
cave,
to say,
the four little
"Can't you
ones
see
ran
that
out
Mother is
happily and
upset?
surrounded Sandy
Father
for
is
a
thinking
while.
of ways to
Gu
comfort
Mengmeng
Mother.
was a
Don't
little
cause
jealous and
trouble."
said,
Kanwu
"How
then
many
realized
days have
that
I been
Mother's
gone?
expression was not quite
She's
right.
closer to you
It
than she
cried
is
out
to me,
twice,
her
but
own mother,
failed to attract its mother's
Are
attention.
you trying to please your
Only
mother-in-law
then did it
in
reluctantly
advance because
soak
you
in
know
the
that your
water and
Aunt
begin to
Sandy will
clear
give
its
birth
body?
to a wife for you
He
in the
thought
future?"
to himself,
Sandy
"I
was
won't
argue
argue
with
with
you for my mother's
She
sake.
sat beside Gu
Otherwise,
Mengmeng
Humph
and
allowed
allowed
Qixian
Qixian
to
to
jump
jump
into
into
her arms.
I'll just stand in
She
front of
hugged
my
him and
mother like
stroked
this
his
and
little
see
head.
how you explain
The
it
two
to her."
outside are about to
Elvis
turn into
knew what
salted
that fellow
fish.
was thinking and
How
could
long
not
do
be
you
bothered
intend to
with
leave
him.
them hanging like
He
this?
thought to himself,
Gu Mengmeng
"If it
was
wasn't
not
because
shy
your
at all.
mother is in a bad
Gu
mood now
Mengmeng
and I'm
pursed her
worried that
lips
you'll
and
get in the
pulled
way while I'm
Sandy's little
coaxing my
hand.
wife.
"Do you think I'll be willing
Then
to
she
care whether
patted
you
her
bathe or
son's little
not?"
buttocks and said,
"Go ask your father to bring
"It's
you out
best
to
if you're
play.
dirty to death.
I want to have a
When my
private
wife
conversation
hates you,
with
I'll
Aunt
immediately
Sandy.
kick you out."
If you dare to
The
eavesdrop,
father and son
I'll
who
run away
hated
from
each other
home.
didn't give each other
Gu
any
Mengmeng
face.
shouted the
But for
words
the
"run
sake
away
of a
from
woman
home"
who was very
at the top of
important
her
to them,
lungs.
they
No matter
temporarily
how
reached
slow
a tacit
Elvis was,
understanding
he knew that
not
she
to
was
cause
warning
trouble
him.
for each other.
Although it was a little
Elvis hugged
complicated,
Gu Mengmeng
it was
and
the
let her
first
sit
time
in
his
his
wife had
arms.
spoken to him in
He
so
held
many
her
days.
hand gently and
So,
asked,
Elvis
"Are
did
you
not
really
dare
not
to
going
delay
to
and
forgive
brought the
Leah?"
4 wolf
Gu
pups away
Mengmeng
with
shook
him.
her head and said,
"He is not the one at fault.
Chapter
He does not need my
470.
forgiveness." Gu Mengmeng
Elvis,
nodded and heaved a
not
sigh of
him.
relief.
Gu Mengmeng,
She hugged Sandy's
not
waist
him,
and
it's
leaned
me.
into her arms.
Elvis sighed and
just like
asked,
how Sandy had
"Because you
leaned
can't
into her
mate with
arms
him?"
when she was
Gu
injured.
Mengmeng nodded.
Gu Mengmeng whimpered and
Elvis,
looked up at
Xiao
Sandy.
Meng, what exactly
"Sandy,
are you worried
I feel
about?
so terrible."
If it's because of me.
Sandy gently
Gu
caressed
Mengmeng
Gu
shook
Mengmeng's
her
hair
head
and
and
said,
smiled
"Both
bitterly.
of them know their
It's
mistakes.
not because of you.
If you are
It's
still
because I
angry,
can't
let
get
them
over the
fight each
hurdle in
other
my
until their
heart.
faces are all
Aside
swollen.
from the topic,
Then you can
calm down and
everyone
forgive
calm
them."
down. Gu
Didn't I
Mengmeng's
give you all
eyes
the
were filled with
procedures
tears.
previously?
Gu
It's
Mengmeng
almost
smiled.
done.
The darkness before
time they
dawn
are
is
not
the
in the
darkest.
wrong.
It's me. Sandy widened her eyes. How could you be wrong?
Chapter
You are
478.
the messenger of the beast
Gu
deity.
Mengmeng
Gu
leaned
Mengmeng
into Elvis's arms
Gu
and
Mengmeng
quietly
rubbed
watched
Sandy's
her 4
round little
sons
face
bathe
in
in
the
the
water.
water.
But the
However,
messenger
her
of the
thoughts
beast
drifted
deity
back to
is
a long
also
time
human.
ago.
There
It
are
was
times
also
when
in
she
this
is greedy,
that a
weak,
vixen
at a
hugged her
loss
and
of what to
confessed
do,
to
and
her,
when she lies
"In
to
my name,
herself.
I swear to the
Sandy
beast
could not
deity that
understand
from
such
today
profound
onwards,
words.
only you will
But
be
she
my
knew that
deity.
Gu
My
Mengmeng
life
was
my
really
everything.
feeling terrible now.
Oh no.
She had
Gu
never seen
Mengmeng
Gu Mengmeng
snapped
so
back to her
depressed
senses.
before.
Her
Gu
heart
Mengmeng
ached
looked
for her
over
and
and
she
saw
frowned.
Oakley.
Sandy
Gu Mengmeng
asked
had not
gently,
seen him
"Then
for a
what
long
exactly
time and had
happened?
almost forgotten about
Can you tell
him.
me about it?"
What is it? Gu Mengmeng
Speak
thought for a
slowly.
while but realized
Oakley's
that she did
character
not
was
know
similar
where
to
to start.
Lee's.
She
He
gave
would
a
not
bitter
usually
laugh
be
and
this
sighed.
anxious,
"I
but
made
the
it
more
with
anxious
Elvis, but I
he was,
can't
the
forget
more
about
he had to
Leah.
speak
I had
slowly.
both sides
in my
Otherwise,
hands
he
and
would
all
definitely
three of
be
us were
stuck and
tortured.
unable to speak.
Leah did not even have a
Oakley
title
was
and
so
was
anxious
anxious
that he kept stomping his feet.
Elvis was
He
even
paced
worse.
2 to 3 rounds
His
on the
newlywed
spot before
wife had
catching
an
his
affair
breath.
and was mentally
Leah
cheating
has
on
gone
him.
up the platform
Not
of
only
the
did he
deity's
have to pretend
punishment
to be
and
deaf
wants to
and
burn
mute, he
himself
even
to
cooperated
apologize
with his
to the
wife to
beast
smash the
deity.
wall because he
Gu
was worried that
Mengmeng
he
was
would be
stunned,
abandoned.
and before she could
Two
think, she had
outstanding
already
males were
started
suffering
running
because
towards
of
the
my
platform of
selfishness.
the deity's
But
punishment.
none of them came to blame
Elvis
me.
transformed
Instead,
into
they
a
coaxed
beast
me,
and
gave in
grabbed
to me,
onto
and
Gu
took care
Mengmeng's
of me.
dress with his mouth.
They were afraid that I
flinging
would be
her
the
onto his
slightest
back.
bit unhappy.
Gu Mengmeng did not
Sandy
struggle.
blinked her eyes and
In terms of
asked,
speed, there was
"Isn't
no
that
way
good?
she could beat Elvis.
Then why are you angry?"
In just a few
Gu
breaths'
Mengmeng
time,
looked up.
Elvis had already reached the
What's so
bottom of
good
the
about it?
platform of the
I couldn't
deity's
let go of
punishment.
Leah, so I was being
His
disloyal to
fourth-level
Elvis.
beast's full speed
I let
was
Leah have
comparable to
fantasies
a
about me,
high-speed
but I
rail,
couldn't
and
give
his
him a title, so I was being
instantaneous burst of
disloyal.
speed showed that
I
he
was
was the
also
one who
very
was being
worried about
disloyal
Leah.
and unjust.
When
So I was
Gu
filled
Mengmeng
with
arrived,
guilt
she
every
saw
day
a
when I
small
faced these
bonfire
two males.
burning in front of
The
Leah.
more I wanted to make
Leah
it
was
up to
adding
them, the more I
firewood
owed
inside,
them.
as if he
I
wanted
can't
to
breathe
make the
anymore.
fire burn even
Sandy
bigger.
asked.
Under
Didn't
the
you already
platform
give
of the
Leah a
deity's
status?
punishment, There were a few people lying in a disorderly dumbfounded expression. At a glance, he saw Barit, Colin, and a few other familiar faces. Sandy asked, but he couldn't recall their names. Everyone in St. injuries on their bodies were not fatal, but they were enough to prevent them from standing up and obstructing him. Sandy asked, Leah, what are you doing? Why doesn't being a pet count? Gu Mengmeng shouted as she walked towards the platform of the deity's punishment. It's just that most of their pet beasts Lee's body stiffened, but he did not turn back. Can't transform at all. He only said quietly, none of them are at Lee's level. You don't even want me anymore. Why are you still here? Stared at Sandy in a daze. You don't want to live because of a woman? What about your ambition when you founded keeping a courtesan as a mistress? Don't want it anymore? Where is your determination to defend Saint Nazir? You don't want it anymore? Chapter 471. What about vengeance against those who have wronged you? Was dumbfounded. What kind of atmosphere was this? Lee's hand paused. Even husbands were helping their wives find, but he still threw a piece of firewood into the small fire pit. If destroying these things you mentioned although can allow me to go back in time and return to the day when Elvis and I possibility that we will not I am willing to slaughter the entire Saint Nazir with my own hands and go back to that time. From treating them well. Take Nina for example. I would rather let 40 over partners and let go of your hand at that time and cause today's at least when she goes out, that beast pet would definitely be by her side. It is not an exaggeration to say that Nina treats no longer had any trace of all her partners. Only emptiness and thought about it and felt that it was understandable. What a pity after all, in the modern world, many young ladies will never forgive their dogs better than their boyfriends. No matter what I do, how I beg, how I repent, if a dog bit her boyfriend, you will never give me another chance. Pretend to hit the dogs. I don't even dare to dream of mating anymore. I just want to be a pet beast that can hug you, but you still want to push me far away. Coquettishly and help her dog if you really don't even have a place for me by your side. But in the other case, if the boyfriend bit the dog, in a world without she had not heard of such an example, the greatest but torture. She guessed that there was no escape even if they did not break up tightly, and her Sandy drank a mouthful of water. Principles or Leah, which in the beast world was more important. There is such a huge the main point of all these was that she could not break through her own principles. How many males do not even have the chance to speak to a female in their entire lives? There were also many males who had mated. But other than that one time, they couldn't even touch Leah was their taken aback and smiled sadly. Compared to them, all I want is to have a place by your side to be able to protect you. What exactly do you owe him? That's enough. Why do you feel burdened? Gu Mengmeng turned around and looked at Elvis and said, Leah is so outstanding, he should have a good partner. I promise I won't mate with him. Why? I promise that my love for you will not diminish. So that he could not find other females? Can you accept having one more member in the family? Or did you let Elvis use force to suppress him and force him to be your beast pet? Lightly. I don't think so. He keeps bragging about how he is your beast pet. Every time he heard others talking about it, his tail would go up to the sky. Hubby, I'm sorry, how does he look unwilling? I'm still a fickle woman. Gu Mengmeng said, not. But Elvis held on to the cup of water to Gu Mengmeng and asked her to drink a mouthful of water, then continued. But what still remember what Leah had said to you outside the cave? Let me tell you, the males in the beast world he said he can die protecting never change their minds after seeing someone else. But he doesn't want to see you get hurt. They don't like you. That means they don't like you. My thoughts are the same. No matter how good you are, I can fight for you. I can die for you. They can't keep you. But I don't want you to have no one to protect you after I acknowledge you. Then even if the beast deity appears, said, there is no way to make Leah as a member of our family. If you really feel that letting Leah be your beast pet allow you to die without any qualms, then just mate with him and accept him. Wouldn't that be the end of it? Then I don't want him. I want you. Why are you so conflicted? Elvis was taken aback and said, Mengmeng bit her lip and said, I just mated with Elvis. It's a good thing to have one more person in the family. Sandy stared at him and asked. Gu Mengmeng clenched her fists tightly and didn't say a word. Just staring at Elvis. Gu Mengmeng hurriedly shook her head and pulled Sandy, who looked like he was going to argue with Elvis. I won't die so easily. Elvis did not object. You know how much I can't bear to leave you. He even created opportunities for Leah. Don't be afraid. I won't give up the position of the first partner to anyone. In the beast world, it was a taboo for males to stop females from mating. I swear to because if a female had too few partners, she would not be able to receive the best care. And lowered her head. Females were originally held onto Gu Mengmeng's shoulders. They would die if they were not careful, so they must receive the best care in all of the deity's punishment. Furthermore, if the female has too few partners, it will also lead to a lack of really jump into the fire. Some races have perished because of this. To look at Elvis, full of guilt. Aside from the topic, but she still took a small step forward and extended her hand towards Leah. Chapter 472. Gu Mengmeng's expression was blank, and the Eagle Owl tribe and nodded instinctively. Forgive me. Sandy took Gu Mengmeng's nod as her head, and so she said excitedly, "Between us, you also think it makes sense, right? I was the one who are the messenger of the beast deity. If you think I tortured myself, then it must make sense. My greatest concession is to let you become a member of my family. To give you love and care, to worship and rely on you, but what else? I will not make. I can't remember. I will probably feel that if you accept Leah, you will owe Elvis. The title of beast pet may become a lifetime of shame for you. You are the messenger of the beast deity. Are you still willing to stay with a selfish position of your first partner and the right to mate before you give birth to a child, and you still say you owe him? What do you owe him? Take a look.
How
Feeling
many
his
powerful
heart
men
beating
in the
again
beast
after
world
death,
did not
he
even
said,
have a child
I
of
told
their
you
own even
before,
when they
your
died.
selfishness
But him,
is
in
what I
just
wished
one
for the
winter,
most.
he already has a
Gu
partner
Mengmeng's
and a
eyes were
child,
wide
and he's
open.
still not content.
For the first time
Does he
since
want
the
to go to
breakup,
heaven?
Gu Mengmeng returned Lee's
was
hug.
speechless from
She was
Sandy's
so careful
rebuttal.
and conflicted.
She started to regret
But when her
teaching
hands
Sandy
really
those
touched
messy
him, she
modern
suddenly
words.
felt at ease.
Ever since
She
Nina was
accepted
gone
Leah,
and she
but
had mated with
the sky
Colin,
did not fall.
this girl's personality
Let's go
had
home,
changed
Daddy
drastically.
Leah.
She
Turn
was
them as
much
you
more
wish.
cheerful and
Digression.
straightforward.
Are
No
you
longer
happy?
the yes-man she was when they
Aren't
first
you going
met.
to say that you love
Actually,
me?
this was quite good, but it was an exception when she used it against herself. Gu Mengmeng could not spread the modern concept
Chapter
of marriage to
480.
Sandy.
Back
Even
in
if
the
she
cave,
did,
Leah
Leah
was
would
still
still
be
be unwilling
unwilling
to
to
let
let
go
go
of
of
Sandy, an
Mengmeng's hand.
unimaginable thing.
These few days,
the
he had
ratio
been
of
suffering
males to
terribly.
females in the beast
He had been
world
living
meant
in
that
the
the
fear
modern
of being
concept of
heartbroken.
marriage would be
The
conserved.
despair of
But as
losing
a
her
modern
the last
person,
time
she
he
would
was
still be
heartbroken
sensitive
was
to it if she
constantly
wanted to
enveloping
adapt
him.
to it. Every
Seeing
little
that
bit of
Gu Mengmeng
sweetness
did
he had
not
after
say
staying
anything,
in the
Sandy
cave during
kept her
winter
anger
had
in
been
and
magnified
continued.
multiple
You
times.
don't owe Leah anything.
Becoming an accomplice
He
to
treats
torment
you of
him.
his own free
The
will.
loneliness
You allowed
after
him to
tasting
treat you
warmth
well.
was the
That's a
most
great
bitter.
gift from the
Gu
heavens.
Mengmeng held
Why don't you
Elvis's
look
hand on
outside?
her
The
left,
number
and
of
Lee's
people
right.
queuing up to treat you
She
can
stood
form
at
a
the
line from
entrance of the
St.
cave,
Nazaire
but
all
could
the
not
way to
return
Sodor.
home.
But
The
other
cave was
than
only
Leah,
so
who else
big
have you
three
given a
people could
chance
not
to?
fit inside
But
by
let me
side.
tell you, although no
Why
one
don't
knows what Leah had
the two of you
experienced
go
in
in
the
hand in
past, I can
hand?
tell that before
Gu
he met
Mengmeng
you,
asked
Leah
sincerely.
seemed
Elvis
seemed
and
to
Leah
be using
exchanged
extreme
glances.
cruelty to squander
They
his
each raised the
life,
hand that was
cruel
not
to
holding
others
Gu
and even more
Mengmeng's hand
cruel
and
to
punched at the
himself.
two sides of the
Gu
cave
Mengmeng
entrance.
remained silent.
Yeah, Erlai's
What
construction
exactly did
team
Leah go
specializing
through?
in expanding
She had only
all kinds
heard
of cave
Elvis talk
entrances.
about it.
One
Leah
punch
had
to
avoided
settle
the
it,
important
providing
parts and talked
convenient
about the
services
trivial,
for your
so
family
that
of
she could
three.
piece
Gu
together a
Mengmeng
vague
smiled
outline.
awkwardly as she
But as for
maintained
the
the posture
details,
of the
unless
three of
Leah
them
was
holding
willing to
hands
tell
into
her,
the cave.
no one else
But
would know what
honestly
he had
speaking,
gone
it felt
through.
weird. Sandy
Felt
drank
like
a mouthful
Daddy
of water
and Mummy
and
were bringing
continued.
you to the
But ever
supermarket.
since he met you,
Damn
he
it,
has become
Gu
a different
Mengmeng
person.
once again felt the
No,
malice
it should
from
be
the
said that
height.
the Leia of
Gu
the past
Mengmeng
had
looked
always
at the
lived
cave
in the
and
night,
felt that something
and you
was
were like the
missing.
sun lighting
After
up his
thinking for
world
a long
and
time,
granting
she
him a
was
new
suddenly
life.
shocked.
She turned to Elvis
Do you
and
know when
asked,
was the first
"Where
time
are
I saw
Huda
Leah
and the
smile?"
rest?"
Meng
Elvis was
asked,
also taken
when?
aback and said, they seem to be still soaking in the
Chapter
water.
473.
Gu Mengmeng glared
Sandy
at him and
paused for a
Elvis
while
immediately
before
said,
continuing.
"Don't be angry,
Actually,
don't
it's
be
not
angry.
up to me to
I will
decide
go
who you
get the
want to
four
mate
of them
with.
now." But
With
I
that,
feel that
Elvis
you are the
hurriedly ran
happiest
out of
when
the
Leah
cave.
and Elvis are by
After
your side.
Elvis left, there
I
was
want
only
you to be
Gu
happy
Mengmeng
forever.
and Leah left in the
You
cave.
won't blame me for
The
talking too
atmosphere
much,
was a little
right?
awkward.
Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng
shook
pulled
her head
hand
and
and
leaned
leaned
into
into
Sandy's
Sandy's
arms,
arms,
saying,
"Not
"You
only
are my
did Leah
best
not
friend.
let go,
Of course
he
you
even
have the
wrapped
right
his
to
arms
express your
around Gu
opinion on my
Mengmeng's
matters."
waist and asked,
"Because I know
"Are you regretting
you are the
taking me
person
in?"
who treats
Gu
me the best
Mengmeng
in
shook
this
her
world."
head and said,
Sandy
"I never
blushed
really
and
let
said
you go.
shyly,
That's
"I was
not it."
greedy on
Elvis
one
and Leah
side,
also
but I did
treat you
not
very
dare
well.
to admit it at the
Gu
same
Mengmeng
time.
sighed.
That's why I
Elvis is
ended
my
up like this
husband
and the
today.
father of my child.
If we had known this
It's
would
only
happen,
right for him
we
to
might
treat
as
me
well
well.
have admitted our
But Leah,
selfishness and
it's
agreed from the
precisely
very
because
beginning.
he treats me so well
Whoever
that I
wants to
can't build
scold
my
us can
happiness on
scold
his
us all
pain
they
and
want.
torment. At
That's
least the
too
three
cruel.
of us wouldn't have
Sandy
to suffer
held
so
Gu
much."
Mengmeng's little face
Leah
and stared
placed Gu
straight at
Mengmeng
her
on
with
the
her
bed
round
and let her
eyes,
sit properly.
saying seriously,
He laid
"Do
on
you
his
know what's
side
the
and
most
used Gu
cruel thing
Mengmeng's
you've
thighs
done?"
as a pillow.
Gu Mengmeng
His
was
furry big
momentarily
tail brushed
stunned and
against
shook
Gu
her head
Mengmeng's
in
waist.
confusion.
Sandy
said,
said,
"I know
"Do
you're
you
lying
still
to me,
remember
but
when
I
you
still
fell
feel
into the lake
happy after
last year?"
hearing it.
That
Meng
day,
Meng, this
Leah
time
suddenly
lie to
came
me
to
for
my
the
house
rest of
and
my
asked
life,
me to
all
cook
right?
a pot of
Gu
watermelon for
Mengmeng
you.
gently
I
caressed
was still
Lee's hair.
angry at him and
The
couldn't
texture
care
of
less
his
about
silver
being
white
afraid
hair
of
was
him,
really
so I
good,
used the
as
wooden
smooth
stick
as
to hit
silk.
him, wanting to chase him away. He hit me a few
Gu
times
Mengmeng
harshly
twirled
but
a
stood
strand of
there in
hair
a
around her
daze, not
fingertip
moving
and
an
said,
inch. "When did
"If it
I lie
wasn't
to
for
you?
Bode stopping
I'm
me, I might
obviously
have
telling the
accidentally
truth,
killed
okay?"
him that day,"
Leah
Gu
said.
Meng Meng was
if you
extremely
really have me in your
surprised.
heart,
This Sandy
why would
really
you be
dared
so
to do
cruel to
anything
me?
for her. Once I
The first
confirmed
time
that
she
you and
resisted
Elvis
Nina,
had mated,
it seemed
I
like it was
immediately
because
came back
Nina
to
was
look for you.
bad-mouthing her
I
behind
knew
her
that you were
back.
angry at my
Leah
scheming, so
was
you would
clearly
definitely
someone
be
she was
punished.
so scared
But I
of that
didn't
she wanted
expect
to take a
that
detour.
you would
But
directly
she
cut
actually
me off
dared
from
to
your
fight him
heart.
for her.
You clearly
Sandy
knew that the
recalled as she
matter between
continued,
Nina and me
I
was
was so
fake.
angry then,
Yet
I
you
asked
kept
him to
saying that I
scram.
was someone
I
else's
told him to
male,
stop
pretending
pretending
to
my
be
heart
kind in
ached.
front of me.
Gu
If
Meng
he
Meng
really
poked
cared
Lee's
about you
head
so
and said,
much, he
"Why
should have
didn't you
cooked it
mention that
himself
when you
and
were
sent it
poking
to
me
you."
at Nina's house?"
Guess what he said?
I was so
Gu
upset
Meng
that I
Meng
didn't
thought
want to
about it,
live,
but could
but I
not
didn't
imagine
see
how
how
Leah
Leah
would
would
have
have
replied
me.
at that time. Sandy said, "He said that he didn't even have the right to cry for you, not to mention
Chapter
preparing food for
481.
you.
I
Then
didn't
why
understand
did you stop
what was
me
going
from
on
hitting
at that
Nina?"
time.
Later
Meng
on,
Meng
I
was
heard
still
from
very
Colin that you
angry
sang
when
a
she
song
thought of
for Leah,
this.
and the lyrics
Leah
seemed to
looked
have
at
a
Gu
line
Meng
like,
Meng with an
"I have
aggrieved
already
look and
lost the
said,
right to
"I
cry
was
for
afraid
you."
that you would dirty your
Gu Meng
hands
Meng
and I was
lowered her
worried that your
eyelids
hands
and
would
muttered,
hurt.
"It's I
Gu
have
Meng
lost
Meng
the right to
replied,
cry for
"That
you.
would definitely not
Sandy,
hurt as much as
yes,
you pinching
that's the
my
sentence."
wrist."
Leah
You don't
looked
even
down
know
and
when
said,
Leah said
"I
those
also
words,
know that
his
you would
entire
definitely
being was
feel a
like
lot
a
of pain
ghost.
when I pinched
I
your
even
wrist.
suspected
That
that I
is
could
my
directly
punishment
pass
to
through his
myself.
body.
When you
There
are
was
in
no
pain,
life
I
at
am
all
in
at
even
that
more
time.
pain.
It was deathly
With
still.
that, Leah
Gu
placed
Meng
Gu Meng
Meng's
Meng's
little
little hand
hand
on
and
his
said,
chest and
"Didn't
said,
you use a stick to hit
"Here,
him?
it hurts
The stick
1,000
didn't
times
even
more."
miss, so how could
Gu
you
Meng
pass
Meng
through?"
looked into Lee's eyes. The deep
Sandy
love had
blushed
never
and said,
faded, and it was
"Aya,
even
it's
more
just a
intense
metaphor.
than before. Think about
You were
it,
the
how
one who
frightening
abandoned
Leah
me,
looked
but
in the
now you're
past.
saying
If he
it
was
as if
still
I let
exuding
you
a
down."
fearsome aura like
Gu
before,
Mengmeng mumbled
how would I dare
unhappily.
to hit him?
Leah said,
That day he
"If
didn't
you
even
weren't
have that
uncomfortable
frightening
and were
aura.
willing to accept
It was as
both
if he
me
was
and
made out of
Elvis as your
snow,
partners,
soulless, yes,
I wouldn't
soulless.
have to do so
Gu
many
Mengmeng's
things."
heart twitched.
Gu Mengmeng
So
said,
at that time
"Tao,
she
it's
was
my
not the
fault?"
only one who was
Leah
dealing with
flipped over
emotional
and sat
wounds.
up, hugging Gu
Leah, that
Mengmeng
hurtful
from his
person,
body.
did not have a good time
He felt
either.
the complete feeling of using her body heat to fill his embrace and said,
Chapter 474.
"It's not considered letting me
Gu
down, but
Mengmeng's
you
lips
owe me
curled up
happiness."
when she recalled
At
Lee's
that
expression
time,
that
you
day.
said that I was your
Sandy
ex-boyfriend
suddenly
and
sighed
asked
and
me
said,
to maintain
"But
my
just
demeanor
now,
and not disturb your life."
when I looked at Leah, he
Heartless
looked
Gu
like he was
Mengmeng.
half
Do
dead
you
and
know that
actually
your
said some
heartless words almost
incomprehensible
caused me
words,
to
something
suffocate and die in front of you?
something like, I
You
crossed
even
the
said that you
boundary,
don't
so you
want
ran
things
away.
that have been touched by others.
Gu Mengmeng pursed
Leah
her lips
kissed the
and did
side
not
of
say
Gu
a
Mengmeng's
word.
face and
She
whispered in
remembered
her
that
ear
Leah
with
had
a
said
deep and
those words
husky
to her
voice.
on the way back
"Do you
from
want to check
Sodor.
if it has been touched before?"
She could not bear the
Gu
responsibility,
Mengmeng's
so she
hair
backed
stood
off.
up and she had
Sandy
goosebumps
said
all over her
carefully,
body.
I am
She
especially
said
grateful to
defensively,
you for
"We
matchmaking
agreed
me
not
with
to mate."
Colin.
But
Leah
Leah
looked
looked
at
at
Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng
with a
now.
your thoughts are
"But I
so
hope that you are
dirty
also
expression and
blissful."
said,
Leah
Who
said,
said
"I
I
want
want
to mate? Even if
I
you
just
don't
want
want
you
to
to
check
check
if
with
your
him
beast
now.
pet
Don't chase him
is
away.
clean.
Without you, he
No
really
need to
can't
check.
live on."
I believe
Gu
you."
Mengmeng bit her
Gu
lips and
Mengmeng
said,
blushed and
"But
wanted to
Elvis,"
retract her hand.
Sandy sighed and
But
said,
Leah did not
"You know
give in.
about Elvis and
He
Lee's
placed
duel,
his
right?"
large hand over
Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng's small
nodded.
hand.
Elvis
Then
had
slowly
already
moved
told her
down
about
from
this
his
during the
chest.
winter.
He
Sandy
removed his
continued.
beefskin dress and
Colin
said,
told me that
"It's
he
better to check
accidentally
clearly
overheard
in
a
case you use
conversation
words like
between
someone
Elvis and
else's
Leah."
mail."
Elvis
Or
said that he
something
seemed to
that
be a
someone
thief
else
who
has
stole
touched
Lee's
to poke my
happiness.
sore spot
In the
future.
beast world, snatching
Gu
is not
Mengmeng
shameful,
knew
but
that
she
she
did
did
not
not
look at indecent
I
things.
guess that Elvis
But she
kept
kept
creating
shift her eyes
opportunities
away.
for Leah because of
Lee's
this
body
reason.
was a size
If you
smaller
accept
than
Leah,
Elvis's.
then Elvis will only
He
get
looked
one
more
more
enchanting
position
as
as
the
otherworldly
partner than Leah.
But his
To
flirtatious
both of
aura
them,
was
it's the
so
same no
fresh and
matter who
refined.
takes this position.
The lines of his
But if
muscles
you
were
reject
smooth
Leah,
without a
it's
trace
fine
of
if Leah
excess
can
fat
find a
or
better
extra
female
muscle.
to mate with.
His whole
But
body
do you
looked
think that
very
this
comfortable.
possibility exists?
Gu Mengmeng really did
Gu
not have
Mengmeng
the
wanted
courage
to
to
say something,
explore
but
some
Sandy
special
did not
parts.
give her a chance.
She answered her own
She
question
turned her face to
directly,
the side and
"Not
said,
possible.
Hurry and wear
Gu
your
Mengmeng
beast-skin dress
almost bit her
properly,
own
or else I
tongue.
will fall out with
Seeing
you."
that Sandy
But
had
Leah
no
did not
intention
care.
of letting her interrupt.
He exerted force
She
in
just
his arms
obediently
and Gu
listened to
Mengmeng fell
Sandy.
into his arms.
Sandy said,
Leah laid
"Then
on
there's
his back
only
and
one
Gu Mengmeng
possibility
laid on
left.
his chest like a little
Leah had
puppy.
nothing left to
She
live for
propped her
because
hands
of you
up
and passed
slightly
away
and
in
looked
the
at
end.
Leah, who was
But what
smiling
about
ambiguously.
He has to
His
feel
thin
guilty
red
for the
lips
rest of
opened
his
slightly,
life
and
because
his
this
voice was
happiness
as
originally
smooth as a
belonged to
seductive
Leah.
love song.
He stole Lee's
Pleasing your own
female,
female
stole Lee's
is every
life,
male's
stole Lee's
priority.
life.
As a
Gu
beast pet,
Mengmeng
I should
wanted to
spare
say
no
that
effort,
this was
shouldn't
not the
I?
way to use
Or,
vanishing
after you
beauty.
enjoyed Elvis, my
But
body
looking at Sandy's
is no longer
furious
enough.
expression, Gu Mengmeng did not dare to interrupt her. She just nodded obediently,
Chapter
indicating that she
482.
understood. Leah tugged
Hearing
on
Gu
Mengmeng's
Mengmeng's
collar
reply,
lightly.
Sandy
His
nodded
slender
in
and bony
satisfaction.
fingers gently caressed
So no
Elvis's
matter
mark.
from Lee's or
The
Elvis's
evidence
point
is right
of view,
here.
you
Keeping
still
Leah
want to
is the
deny
best
it?
choice for them.
Whether you
Gu
want to mate
Mengmeng
or not,
tugged at
it's
her
up
own
to you.
collar.
Don't
Enjoy
feel
my
pressured
ass.
just because Leah
Hurry
treats
and wear
you
your
well,
beast-skin
as
dress
if you owe
properly,
him
or I'm
something if you
leaving.
don't mate with him.
Leah flipped
Please,
over,
it's
pressing
natural
Gu
for a
Mengmeng
male
on
to
top
treat
of
a
him,
female
looking
well.
down at her blushing
You have
face,
to mate with
kissing
someone
her
who
lightly.
treats you well.
So good.
How many partners
You
would
still
you have?
blush because of
Let
me.
me tell you, there is no
Whoever
such rule in
stands
the beast
naked in
world.
front of me, I will
Mating
blush.
depends on the
Gu
female's
Mengmeng
mood.
roared
It has
without
nothing
much
to do with
confidence.
anything else.
Leah was a little disappointed, rubbing his chin.
If Lil Miss
Or
is
Tin
happy,
also
you can wash me
transformed in
clean
front
and
of you
lie down.
previously.
If
But I
Lil
didn't
Miss
see
is
you
not
blush.
happy, there is no
Gu
use even if
Mengmeng
you
said,
lie flat.
"He didn't press down
Gu
on me."
Mengmeng's face was
Lee's
filled with
large
horror
tail
as she
covered
thought
the
to
two of them
herself,
like a blanket.
"Darling
He leaned
Sandy,
down and kissed
can't
the
you be
side
more
of her
tactful
face,
with your
murmuring
words?
softly,
I'm still a
"Guess
baby."
why Elvis went out. Gu Mengmeng. To
Chapter
find our
475.
Leah suddenly laughed.
You value
When we
your
were
lover
not at
over
home,
your friends.
those
4 little
Gu Meng
rascals
Meng
ran
accused.
around the tribe.
Sandy
Which
turned
part of
back
us
to
are
look
not
at Gu Meng
familiar
Meng,
with each other?
then nodded seriously
Using him to
as if
find.
admitting to this
Gu
accusation.
Meng Meng was taken
Gu Meng
aback,
Meng
not
said,
saying a word.
I have nothing to say now that you admitted
he's
it
making
so
space
calmly.
for us. He wants
Sandy
me to
blushed
serve
shyly
you
and
properly.
said,
When
Gu
you
Meng
went to
Meng
participate in the beauty pageant,
I said
you
I
left
won't
the 4
mate.
cubs with me.
Leah flipped
In
over
order to
and
take
laid
care
on
of
his
them,
side
I have
beside Gu
neglected
Meng
Bode
Meng,
and Colin
his
for a
furry
long
tail
time.
covering the
I
important
promise to make it
parts.
up to them once
He
you
patted
return.
Gu Meng Meng's
I will
arm
go back
lightly with
first.
his
They are
slender
all waiting
hands
for
and
me.
pinched her soft little
Gu Meng
flesh.
Meng. Sandy twisted her
To be able
body
to
and
hug you
trotted
like
out.
this,
Kiss
Gu
you,
Meng
talk
Meng
to you
sighed
properly and tell
helplessly,
you
but
how
was
much I
not
love
angry
you
with
without
Sandy.
you avoiding me,
Sandy
rejecting
had
me, or
already
getting
done
angry.
enough for her.
I'm already
The
very
sisterhood
happy
that
and
she
very
had not
satisfied.
obtained in the modern
Gu
world
Meng
had
Meng's
all been
expression
satisfied by
changed.
Sandy.
Gu Meng
It
Meng
was great
glanced
that she could be
sideways at
happy.
Leah, asking,
Ow,
You're not
ow.
angry?
The little wolf
Letting you
scrambled
become a
over
beast
and
Kenwu
pet, but
was the
not
first
willing
to
to
jump
mate with
into
you.
Gu Meng Meng's arms.
Leah pulled Gu
Gu
Meng
Meng
Meng's
Meng
little hand to his
instinctively
lips,
reached out to
kissing
catch
it.
Kanwu.
No matter what
only
you do
to
to me,
realize
I
that
won't
he was
be
covered
angry.
in mud.
Gu Meng Meng
She said
admitted that
helplessly,
she was selfish.
What did you do just
and
now?
Lee's tolerance
Why
and
are you
even
so dirty?
indulgence
presence made her feel sweet.
Ow, ow, ow.
She
Kanwu
burrowed
recounted
deeper into
everything
Lee's
that had
arms
happened
and
just
pressed
now,
her forehead
but his
against
mother
his
did not
chest.
understand a single
You're still
word.
saying you won't be
Rubbing
angry?
Kanwu's head,
Who
she
was the
looked at
one who
Huda,
was so angry that he wanted to turn himself into a barbecue?
Gu Mengmeng
Leah
shouted
rubbed
outside
Gu
in
Mengmeng's little head
exasperation.
gently,
Hubby,
enjoying
boil
the
water
fact
for the
that she was
children to
taking the
bathe.
initiative to approach
Ow.
him.
Elvis
He
howled
said
gently.
then ran in happily.
I'm not angry, I just
Xiao
want
Ming,
to
you
know.
are finally willing
How
to
much
talk
do I
to
have
me.
to do for you
Elvis
to
was
ignore me out of
overjoyed.
heartache?
He took a step
Gu
forward
Mengmeng
and
looked
pushed
up
the
and
4
asked,
cubs onto
what
the
if I
ground.
didn't come?
Then he
Leah
hugged
lowered
his
his
wife
head
and
and
heaved
heaved
a
her
long
eyes.
sigh of relief.
That proves that you
have
really
ignored
don't want
me for so
anymore.
many days.
Then
If
death
I
is
had
a
known
release
that you
for
would
me.
be willing to talk
Gu
to me
Mengmeng
after
hugged
throwing
Lee's
these 4
waist
into
and
the
pressed
mud,
her face
I would
against
have
his
thrown them
chest.
away long ago.
You promised me that
Gu
you would
Mengmeng
never do
raised her
anything to
brows.
hurt yourself.
You threw my sons
Leah
into the
hugged
mud?
Gu Mengmeng tightly
Elvis
and
replied,
said,
that's because your
no,
heart
they
will
jumped
ache if
by
I hurt
themselves.
myself. I couldn't even stop them.
Gu Mengmeng said, you promised
Gu
me that you will
Mengmeng
never
said,
lie to
my
me
heart
again.
will always ache,
Elvis
so
was
you are not
silent.
allowed to do such
Then
things
he pinched
again.
his ears and
Leah,
knelt beside the
Mengmeng,
bed.
I
Really
if I know I
belong
was
to you,
wrong.
right?
Gu
Gu
Mengmeng
Mengmeng
looked
looked
up
at
at
Elvis's
Leah,
henpecked
smiling
look
as
with a
she nodded
dumbfounded
her
expression
head.
and said,
Leah,
stand
in
up
my
right
life
now,
I have
right
never
now.
really owned anything,
Elvis shook
and I
his
have
head
never
and
been
said,
owned by anyone.
no, Bode said that
Meng
if I
Meng,
make
thank
my
you
own
for
female
letting me
angry,
become yours.
I must admit my
Gu
mistake
Mengmeng,
with a good attitude
silly.
so that I can be forgiven. I don't want you to be angry and ignore me again, so I admit my mistake.
Chapter 483.
Gu Mengmeng gritted
The
her
next
teeth
night,
and asked,
Saint Nazir
Bode
held a
taught you?
grand bonfire
Elvis
party.
nodded and said,
After Gu
yeah,
Mengmeng
Bode sent
explained
Sandy
the
over just
plan,
now.
Leah
You two
understood
wanted
and went
to
to
chat and
arrange
didn't
it.
allow us to
Gu
listen, so
Mengmeng was
Bode and I
playing
brought the
rock-a-thon
four of
ball
them
with her
outside
4
for
sons
basic
not
training.
far from the venue.
Gu Mengmeng
She was
laughed
so
coldly
crazy
and
that
said,
her forehead
I will
was
settle
covered
the
in
score
sweat,
with
but she
Bode
was
later.
enjoying it.
You better forget
After being
everything he
pounced on
taught
by
you, not a
Kanwu
single
again.
word. Elvis was
finally
stunned for a
infuriated.
moment and hurriedly
He came
stood
up and flung Kanwu
All right,
far
I
away,
forgot.
then carried Gu Mengmeng with one hand.
Gu Mengmeng
Looking
sat
at
up and
Kanwu,
looked up
who
at
was
Elvis.
spinning in midair and
She
landing
said,
perfectly
my man
without
should
any
be
embarrassment.
of indomitable
Elvis sneered.
spirit. If you
My
pounce
man
on my
won't
wife
do
on the
such a
ground
useless
again,
thing
I will
like kneeling
strangle
down
you
to
to
his
death.
wife.
Gu Mengmeng
Elvis
patted
nodded
the
and
dirt
said,
off her body.
all right, I won't
It's
do it
fine,
if you
the
say
kids are
so.
still young and
Gu
don't know how
Mengmeng
to
nodded
control
in
their
satisfaction
strength.
and said,
He didn't do it
tell
on
me,
purpose,
what kind
don't
of
be
basic
angry.
training did you give these 4
Elvis
little
pointed
ones?
at Kanwu.
They're so dirty.
He is already at the height of your thigh. If he keeps pouncing on you, you will get hurt. Gu Mengmeng did not realize it if Elvis did not mention it. Now that he mentioned it, she took a closer look at her 4 sons. Although the other 3 were not as exaggerated as Kanwu, they were at least the size of an adult husky. What to do? So proud. My sons are tall, Gu Mengmeng laughed. My babies, what did your Aunt Sandy feed you when I was not at home? How did you grow so well? Ow, 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 the 4 little fellows fought to be the first to answer. Then, Gu Mengmeng still did not understand. Turning her head, Gu Mengmeng looked at Elvis, waiting for him to translate. But Elvis sneered. Born as a wolf but eating female food and being fed by humans. How dare you say that? The little fellows were obviously not happy with Elvis's words and were arguing with him. Gu Mengmeng immediately tried to smooth things over. What did Sandy feed them? Elvis laughed in disdain. Bode and Colin were afraid that your sons would be wronged, so they prepared food according to Sandy's. In the end, Sandy was afraid that they would not have enough to eat, so she asked Colin and the rest to carry them and feed them one more time every day. Gu Mengmeng laughed. Haha, it seems like it's true that a mother-in-law dotes on her son-in-law. Elvis raised his brow. You really want the 4 of them to mate with Sandy's children? Gu Mengmeng nodded. Yeah, why? You object? Elvis shook his head. Why would I object to what you said? It's just that. Sandy has been an adult for a long time now, but her stomach hasn't responded. Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis and said with a serious expression, don't expose others' shortcomings. If Sandy hears this, she will be sad. Elvis did not continue speaking. Seeing Leah walking back, he placed Gu Mengmeng on the ground. The moment Gu Mengmeng sat on the ground, the 4 meat buns rushed over and gathered around her. Leah and Elvis had no choice. They did not dare to throw the 4 little ones out in front of Gu Mengmeng, so they could only pretend to be magnanimous and sit at the periphery, using their tails to protect Gu Mengmeng, preventing the 4 little ones from hurting her. As Gu Mengmeng played with her 4 sons, she said to Leah, I want to sit next to Sandy and Mandy at the night campfire later. Leah frowned. What about Elvis and me? Chapter 484. The 2 males looked at each other and sighed speechlessly. A few days ago when Gu Mengmeng was angry, Leah and Elvis were left out in the cold. If not for Sandy putting in a good word for them, one of them would probably still be lying at the door and the other outside the yard. Accept your fate. Gu Mengmeng would always ignore them when Sandy was around.
Just as she was thinking about it, she saw Colin and Bode walking towards them, one on the left and one on the right. Sandy's face was obviously filled with anger. She sat down in front of Gu Mengmeng, huffing and puffing without saying a word, obviously infuriated. Gu Mengmeng looked up at Colin and Bode, asking, "How did the two of you anger my little Sandy baby?" Colin hurriedly waved his hands, saying, "Not me, not me." Gu Mengmeng shifted her gaze to Bode, who also hurriedly shook his head, saying, "Not me either, not me either." Gu Mengmeng smiled. "The two of you wouldn't dare to anger my little Sandy baby." With that, Gu Mengmeng held Sandy's little hand, saying, "Although you look very beautiful when you are angry, I like you more when you are happy. Tell me who angered you." Sandy could never stay angry with Gu Mengmeng for long, so upon hearing her words she could not help but feel a little shy, saying, "You are always spouting nonsense, always coaxing me, not a single word of truth." Gu Mengmeng widened her beautiful eyes, pointing to the sky, and swore, "If I lie to you, may the heavens strike me with lightning." Sandy went forward to cover Gu Mengmeng's mouth, saying, "Don't swear so recklessly, what if it comes true?" Gu Mengmeng retracted her finger and held Sandy's little hand. She pulled her hand away from her mouth and held it in her hand. She nudged Sandy's shoulder lightly and said, "Are you worried that I will be struck by lightning? Your heart is aching." Sandy was finally tickled by Gu Mengmeng's nonchalant look. She poked Gu Mengmeng's brows in exasperation, saying, "The children are watching, you are also not being serious." Gu Mengmeng saw that Sandy's mood had improved, so she stopped fooling around, saying, "Tell me, who exactly angered you? Look at how angry you were just now, you were about to emit smoke." Sandy was still angry at the mention of this matter. "It's that Ellie." Gu Mengmeng squinted her eyes. "Ellie? That snake half-beast female?" Sandy nodded and said with righteous indignation, "She came to find me today because we're both females of the same tribe and we're both half-beasts. She felt inferior in front of others, so it was normal for her to come to me. So, I kindly invited her to have some food with us and invited her to join the bonfire party in the evening. In the end, she actually... Sandy glared fiercely at Colin. Colin innocently lowered his head and didn't say anything. Gu Mengmeng looked at his stance and asked, "What? Does she fancy Colin?" Colin hurriedly waved his hand and said, "No, no. She didn't like me. She said that I had pursued you before." Gu Mengmeng gave him a look of understanding and said, "He went to your place to sow discord, right?" Sandy nodded angrily and said, "His words are so weird, it makes me angry." Gu Mengmeng patted the back of Sandy's hand and said, "What did he say? Let me hear it too." Chapter 485. Gu Mengmeng almost burst out laughing. She held Sandy's hand and asked, "Then what did you say?" Sandy put her hands on her waist and said, "I said if Gu Mengmeng really wants a bear beast as a beast pet, I will be Gu Mengmeng's beast pet without Colin." Gu Mengmeng laughed. "Ha! That's right, which bear can be as cute and beautiful as my little Sandy? If I really want to raise a bear as a beast pet, I will definitely raise you." The four males shuddered. Leah gently tugged at the corner of Gu Mengmeng's shirt and said, "Isn't it good to raise foxes? Bears don't have tails." Sandy was indignant upon hearing that. She turned around and transformed into her original form, revealing her furry little tail and shaking it twice. Then she transformed back into her human form and said, "Who said bears don't have tails? I do." Gu Mengmeng held onto Sandy's arm and straightened her neck to look at Leah, saying, "That's right, who said our Sandy doesn't have a tail? I saw it the last time. It was a very cute little furball, right, Sandy?" Sandy nodded and said, "Yes, it was very cute." Leah felt a strong sense of crisis and despair. Even though she was throwing a tantrum, Gu Mengmeng still held onto Sandy's arm and asked, "Sandy, you don't believe what she said, right?" Sandy said, "I am not stupid. I saw Colin wooing you back then. I am not blind, do I need an outsider like her to tell me? Moreover, if you like Colin, you should have accepted him back then. Why would you matchmake us? That Ellie has a bad heart. She wants me to quarrel with you and then make you sad. I will not fall for her trick." Gu Mengmeng hugged Sandy and swayed, saying, "Yeah, I know my Sandy is the best. She will not be provoked by others. But that Ellie is not simple. She is different from Nina in the past. You better stay away from her, understand?" Sandy tilted her head and asked, "What's different? Aren't they both bitches?" "Yes. This was what Gu Mengmeng used to scold Nina. But seeing how Sandy did not even know what AB** teach meant and spat out the word innocently, Gu Mengmeng still felt as if she had led the country's flower astray. She felt guilty as if she was luring a child to steal fast food noodles. Laughing twice he said, "There are many kinds of sluts." Nina was obviously AB** so he could just beat her back. But he had to be on guard against Ellie, who secretly hurt people. If she can tell you that Colin likes me today, she might tell you that I'm having an affair with Bode tomorrow. Sandy frowned and turned to look at Bode. Bode's legs were trembling. Under the gaze of the chief, witch doctor and Sandy, he stammered, I'm innocent with the Lord Messenger. I didn't, Gu Mengmeng laughed and said, yes, of course there's nothing between me and Bode. But the person who started the rumor. It doesn't have to be me and Bode, it could be Maya and Bode. Mandy and Bode, Ellie herself and Bode, or Colin and Bode. The way Sandy looked at Bode was getting stranger and stranger. Bode had a feeling that he could not explain himself. He suddenly looked up at Gu Mengmeng and said, Lord Messenger, did I, accidentally, offend you? Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, you're not that stupid. Chapter 486. Colin also waved his hands seriously and said, I can't either. Gu Mengmeng placed both her hands on her knees and looked at Bode with a stiff neck. She asked, I heard that you shared with Elvis how to admit your mistakes that day? Bode thought for a while and said, yes. The mighty tribe leader said he made you angry and Sandy was coaxing you, so I taught him how to admit his mistakes. Gu Mengmeng asked again, do you usually apologize to Sandy like this at home? Bode nodded his head seriously and said, not only me, males usually apologize like this at home. Gu Mengmeng believed that Bode would not dare to lie to her and his gaze was too sincere. Since it was unintentional, Gu Mengmeng did not pursue the matter any further. She waved her hands and said, forget it, I will not pursue this matter anymore. Bode heaved a long sigh of relief before standing up to Gu Mengmeng and Sandy. Seeing that Sandy was no longer that angry after Gu Mengmeng's tantrum, he could not help but pat Colin's shoulder and said, luckily it was you who thought of this idea, or else I really don't know what to do. Colin scratched his head and said, as long as they are together, they will not be angry. Gu Mengmeng looked at Sandy and Sandy looked back at Gu Mengmeng. Both of them smiled at the same time. Leah was a little jealous as he swayed his large tail and said, that's why I said, the few of you should thank Mengmeng for not being a male. Boss Humph. Bode said, yes, Colin, quickly thank the great messenger. Colin was stunned and could not react in time. Bode said, quickly thank the great messenger for not being a male. Or else, who among the 9 males in our family would be able to snatch her away? Colin suddenly understood and bowed to Gu Mengmeng and said, great messenger, I thank you for not being a male. Gu Mengmeng patted Leah and said, how many times do you want to play this joke? Didn't Bode already thank you the previous time? Leah, however, turned his head to look at Sandy in jealousy and said, Sandy, you should also thank yourself for not being a male. Sandy pointed at her own nose and looked at Leah with a face full of question marks. Leah said, if you are a male and Mengmeng likes you so much, I will definitely go crazy from jealousy and kill you. Sandy's body trembled and her face turned pale. And me? Elvis's voice was cold as he squeezed his wrist, his bones cracking. Sandy pounced into Gu Mengmeng's arms and hugged her tightly. Sobs, tribe leader and witch doctor are so scary. Gu Mengmeng, you better abandon them and live with me. Elvis and Lee's faces froze. They gritted their teeth. They really wanted to strangle her to death. Gu Mengmeng turned around and glanced at her husky and Samiyet, saying, if you continue to show off, both of you will have to sleep outside the cave tonight. Leah threw himself into Gu Mengmeng's arms, wrapping his furry big tail around Gu Mengmeng's waist. His long and narrow eyes were filled with affection as he pointed at Elvis and said, it's all your fault. Why did you scare Sandy for no reason? Look, you've angered Mengmeng, aren't you going to apologize? Elvis's face darkened. He looked at this scapegoat and clenched his teeth. In the end he still lowered his head and said, I was wrong. Gu Mengmeng did not harp on this matter anymore. She just held Sandy's little hand and asked, other than Ellie, what do you think of the other new females in the tribe? Sandy thought for a while and said, they're all very good. Complete females are originally very rare. It's already not bad for a tribe to have one or two. So many of them came to Saint Nazir at once. It makes me happy looking at them, aside from the topic. Alright my babies, are you happy reading today's update? I love it when you guys are smiling the most. If Susu's text can make you guys smile, please leave a comment and let me know because this will make me very very happy. Chapter 487. Gu Mengmeng said, they used to be the first beauties of the tribe, so it's inevitable that they would be a little arrogant. Did any of them bully you and Maya just because they are complete females? Sandy shook her head and said, sigh, it's strange. They are all complete females but their personalities are all better than the other. Especially that first beauty that you personally chose. She would smile at me every time she sees me, and speak to me in an amiable manner. Yeah, it's just a little weird they seem to be imitating you. Gu Mengmeng was taken aback and suddenly understood. As the messenger of the beast deity, in their eyes she was probably like a modern little girl who was infatuated with an idol. Give me a XX nose and a XXX chin. In the beast world there was no such thing as a nose and chin for sale, so she could only get a similar temperament. Alright, if the females here could learn from her, at least it would be pleasant to interact with them. Just that, how long could they last? Speaking of Mandy, Gu Mengmeng suddenly recalled something. She hurriedly took out a bamboo cup from her pocket and handed it to Sandy, saying, here, this is for you. Sandy received the cup happily and smiled, saying, isn't this the cup you gave to the first beauty? I have one too. Gu Mengmeng hooked Sandy's little face and said, in my eyes, you are the first beauty, no one can be compared to you. Before Gu Mengmeng could finish her sentence, she felt a tightness around her waist and was carried up by Leah. Without any communication, he and Elvis sandwiched her in the middle and walked towards the main venue of the night campfire party. As they walked, they said, the decorations at the venue are almost done. You have to come over and see where to place that thing from the previous time. Colin also carried Sandy up in a tacit understanding and walked back with Bode. He said, look, the great messenger is so busy, you can't keep causing trouble for her. Let's go home first and find a place to place this cup. If not, it'll be useless even if you cry if it gets lost later. The two females were forcefully separated, and when they regained their senses, one was already at the venue and the other in the cave. Gu Mengmeng knew that these two fellows were jealous, blaming her for chatting endlessly the moment she saw Sandy and giving them the cold shoulder. But which woman wasn't the same? Bosom friends always have endless topics to talk about. Gu Mengmeng glanced at the thing Leah was talking about and smiled. This is called a drum. It's a musical instrument from my place. When I used to work at the amusement park, I learned how to make it from the old man who sold souvenirs. However, my skill was not good and it was far worse than the old man's. This one is barely usable. Leah took the wooden mallet that Gu Mengmeng had made previously and knocked on the drum. He smiled and said, let's perform that song today. It makes one's blood boil and I feel that it suits today's atmosphere very well. Gu Mengmeng took over the drumstick and played with it in her hands. Previously it was to help Sandy and Colin to liven up the atmosphere that I risked my voice. Today, since it's the welcoming ceremony, let's throw caution to the wind. Leah smiled and nodded before asking again, then what should I sing for the second song? Gu Mengmeng said, Colin has already mated with Sandy, how could there be a second one? Just sing a song to warm up the place. Chapter 488. Gu Mengmeng frowned and asked, singing A Little Happiness again? I'm already traumatized. Leah shook his head and said, you're not allowed to sing that song anymore. Elvis hugged Gu Mengmeng's waist and said, just one song will do, don't tire yourself out. Leah did not insist and only said, then who's going to help you carry the drum? Me or Elvis? Gu Mengmeng felt the increasing pressure from both sides. This was the start of internal strife? Did they have to fight for this kind of physical labor? For the sake of family harmony, Gu Mengmeng said, both of you help me carry the drum and be more stable, all right? Elvis and Leah nodded and did not say a word. At sunset, half the sky was dyed red by the setting sun. Gu Mengmeng asked someone to take a few large pieces of oil from the animal fats and smear them on the wood. Then she held a torch and lit it up lightly. The wooden pagoda that was as tall as a human was instantly ignited. Gu Mengmeng turned around and raised the torch high up. With a loud shout, with Elvis leading the way, all the males roared towards the sky. The scene was rather spectacular. Gu Mengmeng did not change her clothes because she did not intend to perform initially. She only agreed because she did not want to reject Leah. That cape and shorts had long been lost somewhere and could not be found, so Gu Mengmeng could only wear her normal clothes and stand on the drum. Although it was a little weird, fortunately, according to the standards of the beast world, which part of Gu Mengmeng was not weird. This set of clothes was not that important anymore. Elvis and Leah lifted the drum steadily and Gu Mengmeng sang and danced on the drum. Although her movements were obviously not as energetic as when she proposed to Colin, it was enough to shock those who had just joined Saint Nazir and were witnessing such a performance for the first time. When Gu Mengmeng finally roared at the top of her lungs, the sound of tearing, Colin stood up and transformed into a bear. He pounded his chest with both hands and roared towards the sky. In just a breath's time, the original tribesmen of Saint Nazir immediately understood and transformed into beasts, roaring together with Colin. The new tribesmen were influenced and also imitated them to transform into beasts, roaring towards the sky. This act later became a ritual in Saint Nazir. Every year when new members joined, Gu Mengmeng would sing Alien once. Then the guardian messenger would lead the roar towards the sky. It was said that if we roared together we would be a family. However, Gu Mengmeng was completely dumbfounded. What was the connection between screaming together and being a family from now on? Is there any scientific evidence? For example, after shouting, the DNA would be shattered, causing genetic recombination and they would become a family? And the one who added fuel to the fire was Leah. The explanation he gave was, the roars of the males with all their might would be transmitted to the mighty beast deity who had come to listen to the messenger's song, letting the mighty beast deity know of their unity. From then on, they would become the tribe of the messenger that the mighty beast deity recognized. Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders and thought to herself, this is definitely bullshit, but everyone in the beast world believes it. Originally, Leah and Elvis were supposed to slowly place Gu Mengmeng down from the drum amidst the roars of the crowd before saying a few motivational words and starting the barbecue carnival. But when the roars stopped abruptly, there was a sudden change. Chapter 489. Leah. Gu Mengmeng reached out to grab Leah worriedly but missed. The drum let out a loud thud and rolled to the side. Gu Mengmeng thought she would fall along with the drum, but the strength around her waist was like an iron clamp, locking her body in place. Looking up, she met Elvis's blue eyes. His brows were tightly furrowed, sweat pouring down like rain. He was clearly in pain, but he was forcing himself to hold on. Hubby, what's wrong? You guys, what's wrong with you guys? Gu Mengmeng had no idea what was going on. She could only hold on to Elvis's shoulders and stare into his eyes. Elvis was trembling all over, but he still controlled his strength and slowly placed Gu Mengmeng on the ground. Gritting his teeth, he squeezed out a sentence, "Don't run around, it's dangerous." Then, as if he was being pressed down by something, he crawled on the ground, unable to straighten his back no matter how hard he tried. The scene was so familiar. It looked exactly like the others who could not straighten their backs when Elvis released his beast pressure in the past. Gu Mengmeng stood up and looked around, only to realize that no one was standing apart from her. Many orcs were unable to maintain their human forms due to the pressure. There were a few strong ones, but they were all sprawled on the ground like Elvis, unable to get up. Ow 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 ow. The familiar cries made Gu Mengmeng's heart skip a beat. She looked towards the source. It was Hudder and the rest. The four little fellows had been tied up with tree vines and were being dragged out of the tribe. Gu Mengmeng could not be bothered with Elvis's instructions and chased after them. But her speed was too slow. By the time she reached the boundary of the tribe, Hudda and the rest could no longer be seen. Hudda! Gu Mengmeng yelled at the top of her lungs, "Qixuan, Jiaoyu, Jianwu." None of the children responded to her. Gu Mengmeng plopped onto the ground, her head exploding with a bang. Bullshit messenger of the beast deity, how could she be so helpless at such a time? Gu Mengmeng knew that crying was useless, but she stood rooted to the ground, not knowing which direction to run in. "Come up." A familiar voice rang out. Gu Mengmeng looked up and saw Ian standing in front of her in his half-orc form. His wings were spread open and he was ready to fly at any time. His forehead was full of sweat and it was obvious that he was suffocating from the strong beast pressure.
The bleeding wound on his leg was a ghastly sight, but Gu Mengmeng did not have time to care for him. She just jumped onto Ian's back. The moment Ian caught Gu Mengmeng, he transformed into an eagle owl and flapped his wings to fly into the sky. The higher he got, the more stable Ian became. He circled a few times before flying in a certain direction. At this height, Gu Mengmeng was basically in a state of being blind. She could not see anything, and other than the sound of the wind whistling beside her ears, she had no other senses to use. The only person she could rely on now was Ian, who was carrying her. After flying for 2 days, Gu Mengmeng and Ian arrived at Sauder. Standing at the entrance of Sauder, Gu Mengmeng was already in a daze. After 2 days of non-stop flying, both Ian and Gu Mengmeng were exhausted. Gu Mengmeng's only hope of saving her son was to hold on. "Are Huda and the rest here?" Gu Mengmeng asked Ian. Ian shook his head and said in a weak voice, "After we took off, Huda and the rest were nowhere to be found." Aside from the topic, "Yes, that's right, I was the one who caused trouble. I just could not bear to see Gu Mengmeng live a good life for 2 days and had to torment her. Aren't all mothers-in-law like this?" Chapter 490. Then why did you bring me here? Gu Mengmeng howled hysterically, her tears falling uncontrollably. Ian forced himself to hold on to Gu Mengmeng's shoulders and said, "If it's a wolf cub, you have to remain calm." Gu Mengmeng forced herself to hold back her tears and looked at Ian stubbornly. She kept telling herself in her heart that she had to be strong, her sons were still waiting for her to save them. Ian took a deep breath and said, "To be able to use beast pressure to suppress the entire Saint Nazir, he must be at least a 5th level orc and not someone who just reached 5th level. He must be at least a 5th level middle stage or even a 5th level peak. Under such circumstances, even if you and I find a wolf cub, we won't be able to bring it away. You need reinforcements. 5th level, 5th level." Ian could not hold on any longer, and before he could finish his sentence, his body tilted and he landed beside Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng supported Ian and forced herself to calm down while repeating Ian's words. 5th level orc? I know a 5th level orc. Reinforcements. Cool. Gu Mengmeng suddenly understood what Ian meant. Among all the 5th level orcs she knew, the only one who was willing to help her and had the ability was Cole. Gu Mengmeng used all her strength to support Ian up and walked towards Sauder with difficulty, step by step. Just when she reached the signboard, she saw Cole leading a group of people out to welcome them. Cole leads the Sauder tribesmen to welcome the mighty messenger. Cole stopped 3 steps away from Gu Mengmeng, one knee on the ground, and placed his right hand on his left chest to bow. Gu Mengmeng did not have the same confidence as Ian. When she left this place, she was not very friendly towards Cole. Even because of Leah, she was quite hostile towards Cole and spoke rudely. Back then, she bragged that she would never come to Sauder again and wanted to make Saint Nazir into a brand new messenger tribe, blah 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 blah. Now, would he still be willing to help her? She bit her lower lip. For her sons, what was her face worth? Even if Cole said that he would only help if she lay on the ground and bark like a dog, she would only ask if he wanted her to learn from a Pekingese or a teddy bear. Cole, help me. Gu Mengmeng's nose turned sour. She only managed to say these 5 words before her tears fell. Cole frowned and stood up to take Ian from Gu Mengmeng's body. He handed him over to the person beside him and said, "He looks like he is overly fatigued. Bring him to the stone house to settle down and let him recuperate." The people next to him didn't say anything and directly helped Ian to leave. Cole then turned around and gently wiped away the tears on Gu Mengmeng's face. He frowned and said, "Sauder is the messenger's tribe and we are your loyal subordinates. As long as it is your command, Cole will definitely execute it to the end. So Lord Emissary, don't cry, you are our god. If you cry, we don't know what to do." Gu Mengmeng wiped away the tears on her face and looked at Cole with gratitude. "Someone kidnapped my son, but I don't know who it is. He had used his beast pressure to suppress everyone in Saint Nazir. So Ian suspected that the other party was at least a 5th level or above orc. You're the only 5th level orc I know. Can you help me save my son?" After all, this place was relatively safer. We can prevent this incident from happening again. Gu Mengmeng met Cole's eyes and asked, "Is this your condition to help me find my son?" Chapter 492. Cole's suggestion did not receive any response from Gu Mengmeng, and after that day, Cole did not bring it up again. After another 3 days, when Cole staggered into Gu Mengmeng's room covered in blood, Gu Mengmeng jumped in fright. Cole staggered to Gu Mengmeng and knelt down on one knee. He held up a ball of blood with both hands and presented it to Gu Mengmeng. Lifting his blood-stained face, he smiled and said, Little master. I brought it back for you." A trickle of red flowed down his forehead, past his eyelashes and dripped onto the floor like a bloody tear. Gu Mingming's hands trembled as she took the lump of meat that was dyed red with blood from Cole's hands. Before she could see clearly what it was, Cole had already collapsed at Gu Mingming's feet. Gu Mingming was so frightened that she lost her head. The guards at the door hurried in and heaved a sigh of relief when they realized that there were no intruders. "Great messenger, don't be afraid. We will carry Leader Cole out now." Gu Mengmeng looked at the blood-stained Cole and then at the ball of blood in her hands. "There's no need for that. Go get the witch doctor and boil some water." "Yes." The people at Sauter never questioned Gu Mengmeng's orders. They just carried them out. Not long after, witch Dr. Dylan rushed over. He checked on Gu Mengmeng the moment he entered the room. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with her, he heaved a sigh of relief and started to treat Cole. The person guarding at the door brought in boiled water and Gu Mengmeng started to carefully wash the blood lump in her arms. When basin after basin of clear water was replaced with blood water, the blood lump's original appearance was finally revealed. Tixian. Even though he was quietly closing his eyes and not moving, Gu Mengmeng could clearly tell which son was in her arms. "Baby, I am Mummy." Gu Mengmeng held back her tears and gently wiped Qixuan's body with a beast skin. She called out softly, "Good little Xian, don't scare Mummy. Quickly open your eyes and look at Mummy, alright?" No matter how she called out to him, Qixuan just lay there motionlessly. If not for the fact that his pulse was still beating, Gu Mengmeng would have suspected that her son was dead. She had carefully examined Qixuan's body. There were no obvious wounds, so the blood should not be Qixuan's but Cole's. Gu Mengmeng carried Qixuan to Dylan and asked, "How is Cole?" Dylan shook his head and said, "I don't know what kind of enemy could actually injure clan leader Cole to this extent. 9 of his bones were broken and there were countless external injuries. The worst part is the laceration on his abdomen. His internal organs can be seen and the wound is black. Seems like he was poisoned." More than half of the blood on Cole's body had been washed away, but the wound was too big. The moment the old blood was washed away, new blood immediately flowed out. The beast skin on the bed was already soaked. It would be strange if he didn't die from this. Gu Mengmeng asked Dylan, "Do you have an antidote?" Dylan looked at Cole's wound and deliberated for a moment before saying, "This poison is not very serious. With Leader Cole's abilities, he should be able to digest it himself. The main problem now is to stop the bleeding. If the bleeding can't be stopped, I'm afraid it's impossible to save him." Gu Mengmeng handed Qixuan over to Dylan. "Help me check on him too. Cole's injury. Let me try." Chapter 493. Gu Mengmeng did have a theoretical method. As for actual practice, she had only observed Leah suture Sandy's partner Adali's wound. But now that Leah was not around, if she did not do anything, Cole would be dead meat. Her hands trembling, Gu Mengmeng suppressed the fear in her heart and used one hand to stabilize the exposed flesh, while the other hand began to suture. Or perhaps she should be thankful that Cole was in a deep coma, or else Gu Mengmeng's method of suturing would probably kill Cole to death. Although the process was a little complicated, Gu Mengmeng finally managed to fix Cole's wound back in place. After asking for a clean boiled beast skin, Gu Mengmeng wrapped Cole up like a mummy. After settling Cole, Gu Mengmeng turned back to look at the dumbfounded Dylan and asked, "What's wrong?" Dylan suddenly snapped out of his trance and said, "The great messenger's medical skills are really miraculous and amazing." Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said tiredly, "Save the flattery. How is my son?" Dylan replied, "Little master did not suffer any external injuries. I have checked his internal organs and found nothing wrong with them. He is in a coma. It might be due to poison. But I am afraid we will only know what kind of poison it is when Leader Cole wakes up." Gu Mengmeng nodded and hugged Qixuan in her arms. "Then don't go back to stay for this period of time. I remember that there is an empty room beside mine.
You can stay here first so that it will be more convenient to deal with any emergencies. Yes, sir, Dylan replied respectfully and left the room. Gu Mengmeng carried Qixin and sat by the window. She gently stroked his back and said, "Little Xian, be good. You must be safe, understand? You must get better quickly and then we can go find your other brothers. Mummy still wants to see you all grow up, evolve, mate and have babies." Cole remained unconscious for half a month. When he opened his eyes again, he saw Gu Mengmeng carrying Qixin in her arms and lying on the side of his bed. A pair of soft hands were placed on his wrists. "Great messenger?" Cole moved slightly. The sharp pain in his abdomen made him frown and cry out in a low voice. Gu Mengmeng woke up with a start. She sat up and stared straight at Cole. They stared at each other for a long time before returning to her senses. Gu Mengmeng reached out to touch Cole's forehead and realized that he no longer had a fever. She then heaved a sigh of relief and said, "You're finally awake." "Great messenger." Cole wanted to say something but was interrupted by Gu Mengmeng. "You've been in a coma for more than half a month. You've been relying on honey water to maintain your strength. You must be very weak now. Although I have a lot of questions to ask you, I'm not in a hurry. Lie down first. I'll get someone to bring you some food. We'll talk about the rest later." With that, Gu Mengmeng placed Qixin by Cole's bedside. "Help me look after my son." Cole smiled gently and said, "All right." Gu Mengmeng turned around and went out. As she called Dylan in to check on Cole's body, she instructed the guards outside to prepare some light food and fruits. Chapter 494. Gu Mengmeng prepared sweet potato porridge for Cole and added minced meat. She also cut a small plate of fruits and passed it to Cole. Cole wanted to take it from her but he could not even lift his hands. Gu Mengmeng scooped a spoonful of porridge and blew on it to warm it before bringing it to Cole's mouth. "You were injured because you saved my son. Give me a chance to take care of you. Consider it as compensation." Cole did not reject her and did not say a word. He just smiled and finished the food Gu Mengmeng brought to his mouth. This was not the first time a female fed him like this. But it was the first time he felt a warmth that nourished his entire body. After eating, Gu Mengmeng wanted to carry Qixin up from the bed but Cole held her wrist gently. He waved his hand and said, "You must be exhausted these few days, right? Let him sleep beside me for a while. You can also rest." Gu Mengmeng pushed Cole's hand away and carried Qixin in her arms. "I will not feel at ease if my son is not in my arms. I will carry him." Cole did not stop her. He smiled and said, "This is the first time I have seen a female like you being so concerned about a male cub. He is clearly not the eldest son nor the youngest son." Gu Mengmeng knew the tradition of the Snow Fox tribe. The eldest son would inherit the position of tribe leader while the youngest son would inherit the authority of the witch doctor. So she only cared about these two sons. "The flesh that fell from my body is a treasure in every aspect. It has nothing to do with the ranking." Cole's gaze was a little complicated. She could not tell what he was thinking about. In the end he just nodded silently. Then without waiting for Gu Mengmeng to ask he went straight to the point. "The one who kidnapped the little master is Ellie. The power behind her is the Snake King Valley." Gu Mengmeng frowned. "Ellie? Why?" Cole replied, "My initial guess is that she wants to use the little master to lure you to the Snake King Valley. But the mighty one in the Snake King Valley has no interest in unifying the beast world. Otherwise he would not have sealed himself off from the Snake King Valley for so many years. So I suspect that all these are Ai Li's personal decisions and she was the one who wanted to lure you to the Snake King Valley." Gu Mengmeng thought about it. The last time Ellie surrendered to Sauter, Cole rejected Ellie because of her. At that time, Ellie gave her a piece of scale with simplified Chinese characters written on it. She could tell that it was a fake at one glance. At that time, Ellie mentioned that the real one was in the Snake King Valley. Therefore, her motive right from the start was to lure him to the Snake King Valley? It was just that she wasn't very curious about that information, so she didn't take the bait. So she changed her target to the wolf pups? What was his purpose? Everyone would have a motive for doing things. Deceiving her to go to the Snake King Valley and then what? Moreover, since she had the ability to kidnap the wolf cub, why didn't she kidnap him directly? Wasn't it easier to deal with a female than to control 4 wolf pups? Gu Mengmeng really could not understand. Frowning, Gu Mengmeng looked up at Cole and said, I want to make a trip to the Snake King Valley. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.